movies come in many guises these days, with psychological affairs, absurdist statements, and slashers aplenty. But some of us are still happy to settle down with a good old-fashioned monster movie. You know the kind. Characters are stalked by and have to fight something scary and real, something that doesn't come from within, but launches an offensive from the outside. The thing is, monster movies are not the same as they used to be, but maybe that's a good thing. Monster movies are a little unfashionable of late, suffering the same fate as pirates, cowboys, and melodramas. Thus, every monster feature appearing on our screens this decade has had to go the extra mile in order to be noticed, never mind loved, adored, Oscar-nominated. For the past 5 years, monster-loving filmmakers have been doing just that. Taking what they love and reshaping it, working to confirm, deny, subvert and upgrade the genre in the hopes of nabbing a dedicated audience and remaining relevant. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and these are the 10 best monster horror movies of the 2020s so far. Number 10, Significant Other. Similar in subject matter and scope to Lee Janiak's Honeymoon, Dan Burke and Robert Olson's Significant Other nonetheless stands apart, thanks to its deft narrative turns and another dependable horror performance from alt scream queen Micah Monroe. Monroe and Jake Lacey star as Ruth and Harry, a couple who are off on their jollies, hoping to enjoy a hiking weekend out in the vast woodlands of America's Pacific Northwest. But unbeknownst to them, a red meteor has recently crashed, and its inhabitant, who has caused biological havoc on the flora and fauna, is on the warpath, hoping to come between the kind of happy couple. Significant Other turns on a rift of awkwardness and suspicion between the couple and the viewer that uses a failed marriage proposal and an off-screen secret to mask its mid-film twist, one that's genuinely unexpected and wholeheartedly justifies itself. But the film really comes into its own when the shape-shifting monster from another planet emerges proper, managing a comic tone that balances out the bleakness, elevating what begins as a slow-moving and rather depressive couple horror to a different breed of monster movie. The ending might not be for everyone, and for many of us feels like it invites a sequel, but the legwork leading up to it is admirable. Number 9, Hatching. Finland doesn't have much of a presence in the horror scene, much less within the monster movie subgenre, but Hatching has single-handedly gone a long way to changing that. Hannah Bergholm's low-budget feature takes us into the private lives of 12-year-old gymnast Tinia and her family, opening on Tinia's mother killing a crow that has found its way into their home. From there, things only take a turn for the stranger, as Tinia discovers the crow's orphaned egg and decides to incubate it in her bedroom, where it grows in size and hatches what can only be described as a giant bird-like hellbeast, which Tinia lets sleep under her bed. As you do. A cautionary tale of childhood trauma and the pressures of an overbearing parent, the malevolent bird becomes a force of violence in Tinia's life, often acting out in ways that mirror her anger and anguish. Rather than conform to the traditional genre trope of the family versus the beast, the creature becomes more and more like Tinia, eventually usurping her place entirely in the family unit. And the remarkably seamless blend of practical effects and CGI sell every moment of it. Number 8, A Quiet Place Day 1. Both a spin-off and prequel to John Krasinski's 2 Quiet Place films, Day 1 puts Michael Sarnowski behind the camera and Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn in front of it for an extended look at what happened when the Quiet Place creatures first landed on Earth. Picking up just before the meteors crash into Earth, we enter the world of Sam, a terminally ill cancer patient who lives as quiet a life as is possible in New York City with her cat Frodo. Once all hell breaks loose, she is thrown together with law student Eric, and the pair have to hide out and make their way in fits and starts across Manhattan in order to get on the boats that will save the survivors from the horrific noise-tracking aliens. Super suspenseful throughout, the film makes full use of the silence Sam and Eric are forced into, with every whisper a moment of tension, every misstep a possible death sentence, making the alien creatures and sound itself dual threats. Yes, we've seen it before in the first 2 films, but the scale of the city environment elevates this to become the best of the series, and an essential monster movie experience. Number 7, Prey. Following 2018's fun but ultimately uninspired The Predator, the latest installment in the Predator franchise decided to take a bit of a left turn, surprising us all. Director Dan Trachtenberg put Amber Midthunder and Dakota Beavers onto North America's Great Plains as tribal warriors eking out a life way back in the 1700s. As previous entries have told us, the Predators like to use Earth as a hunting and training ground, and this time around, Naru and her brother are stuck using just basic weaponry and survival skills to take on the new feral predator, whose ferocious and animalistic approach arguably makes it a tougher foe than the more logical, tactical predators of the other films. Hunted by the beast, Naru turns its tactics of subversion, stealth, and animal aggression back on the creature, to ultimately prove herself and be recognized as a warrior, but not after a hell of a lot of bloodshed, leaving the tribe considerably slimmer than before. Trachtenberg's effort is impressive because it manages to capture the overall vibe of the first Predator as a true monster movie, while offering something we have never seen before that isn't just make it big and give it pet dogs. Number 6. Nope. Jordan Peele knows his genre reference well, and when he sets out to make a monster movie, he makes a kaiju UFO western monster movie. And this is precisely what we get in Nope, a film that ought to have been called Don't Look Up, if that name hadn't already been taken. Nope stars Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer as OJ and M. Hayward, horse-wrangling siblings who are dogged by a mysterious presence in the skies. A flying saucer-like creature they call Jean Jacket is abducting their horses at night, causing spikes and dips in their electricity, and raining small objects and keepsakes from the sky that turn deadly when they reach top velocity. Despite appearances, this is no spacecraft, but a gigantic flying monster that can unfold and adopt an even larger inflated form. And the Haywoods put their lives and livelihood on the line to find a way to defeat and prevent it from destroying everything they have. Peele offers us a full palette of horror tropes while putting his own distinctive spin on them, inviting us into a world where we recognize the setup but not the follow-through. The suspense, the mystery, and the overall surreal tone make Nope a cut above the average monster movie, and easily one of this half-decade's best. Number 5. Barbarian. Another monster movie with a twist, Zach Cregger's Barbarian begins its first act looking more like an abduction or home invasion thriller, as Tess and Keith end up double booked at the same Airbnb in a bad neighborhood. But rather than a nefarious ploy, this is just the product of a negligent landlord, and the two manage to bond despite some unexplainable occurrences during the night. Well, those occurrences turn out to be a monstrous beast living in a labyrinth of tunnels under the house, which emerges at night and abducts the guests. Keith gets splattered and Georgina finds herself in the thing's nest acting as baby to the appropriately entitled mother, whose rage emerges on a dime and who seems to want nothing more than to keep, nurture, and often kill some adult children. From the first act twist through to the big reveal and devastating finale, Barbarian ensures there's not a slack moment while keeping us guessing every step of the way. And it manages to make a sympathetic character of its monster in the process, which is no mean feat. Number 4. Lamb. Something's rotten in the state of Iceland, and odds are it's the lamb. A24 has been going hell for leather this past decade, releasing a succession of original, thought-provoking horror movies, quite unlike anything we've seen before. Amongst these is Lamb, which focuses on Icelandic farmer couple Maria and Ingvar, whose lives are altered by one of their sheep birthing a human-lamb hybrid named Ada. This rather questionable predicament becomes unintentionally funnier the more it goes unmentioned, given that Ingvar is the only man 4 miles. Did he take a liking to the sheep that birthed Ada? This conundrum is finally put to bed when Ada's true father eventually turns up. Despite suspicions and fears, the lamb at the core of the story is not the monster we should be afraid of, only its offspring. A nightmarish ram-man hybrid, the one we see only shadows of in the first scene, comes to claim Ada in Lamb's conclusion, leaving devastation and horror in its wake. A spacious meditation on loss in isolation, Lamb spends the bulk of its runtime trying to offer an unconventional second chance to a couple stricken by a miscarriage. But the long shadows of monster and body horror are always just a stone throw away, never allowing the tension to subside. Number 3. Smile. 2022 was a stellar year for the monster movie, delivering a glut of major productions that delivered the goods in innovative, shocking, and downright ghastly ways. But the year's most innovative and unsettling entry in the canon comes in the unassuming form of Smile. What could have been a run-of-the-mill psycho-supernatural horror, a la 2018's Truth or Dare, is elevated by writer-director Parker Finn and his team to become a monster movie quite unlike anything else of the half-decade, where the monster is intangible, illusory, and, well, kind of everywhere at once. No space is safe for therapist Rose Cotter, who witnesses the grinning suicide of a patient and is then haunted by smiling figures wherever she goes. Rose can't be certain where the line between reality and delusion is drawn, and finds herself trapped in a seemingly unescapable nightmare that, if she can't muster up the gumption to off someone else in brutal fashion, will result in her parasitic monster stalker consuming her whole. While Smile 2 would equally be as comfortable in this spot, we have to go with Smile because its jump scares are more original and tactful. It relies less on narrative rug pulls and more on authentic twists, and really just because it started the whole darn thing. Number 2, Alien Romulus. 2024 saw the triumphant return of the Alien franchise as Fede Alvarez scrubbed over the decades of inconsistent entries in the series and took things back to basics, with the aesthetic and setup of the original movie, plus a young cast and a neat array of horrifying surprises. Alien Romulus follows 6 orphaned space colonists who are willing to do anything to escape their life of servitude to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and find a new start off-world. Unfortunately for them, they have to raid a ravaged and derelict space station that harbours more than just the supplies they need. Waiting for them are facehuggers and xenomorphs, hoping to infect them, spawn from them, and find a way to the surface of the planet below. All the usual hallmarks of the Alien films are here, as the small team navigate their way around a large, dark ship, contending with malevolent androids, malfunctioning tech, and monsters of all sizes. Gone are the excesses of Ridley Scott's aborted 2010s trilogy, James Cameron's action, or Jean-Pierre Jeunet's stylish but seriously unscary style, replaced with breathtaking scenes that remind us precisely why we ought to be afraid. And the performances from the ragtag group guide our every emotion throughout, with David Johnson's dual effort in particular being nothing short of Oscar-worthy. Number 1, Sinners. Calling Ryan Coogler's Sinners a monster movie seems reductive, given how expansive and multifaceted a film it is. And yet, when all is said and done, a monster movie it is. Michael B. Jordan takes on a dual role as Smoke and Stack, twin gangsters who have pushed their luck in Chicago and scarpered back to their deep southern hometown with booze, money, and a new American dream. They open a juke joint in an old sawmill, rope in the town's bluesmen, and throw what they hope to be the first of many nights to remember. But evil brews on the outskirts in the form of Remick, a smooth-talking Irish immigrant with a song in his heart, a skip in his step, and blood and drool running down his chin. Holed up in the Duke, Smoke, Stack and their friends and family have to fight through the night as Remick's glowy-eyed army of the undead grows, vampires and all, with a taste not just for blood, but for the music that allows them to commune with their ancestors. The vampires are hideous, the music is loud, the scares are plenty, and everything we know to do when monsters are at the door goes out the window when Coogler's characters are pulled hither and thither by their emotions and bonds. It's a slick film that surprises with an intense, barnstorming soundtrack from Ludwig Göransson, and even at 2 hours 20 minutes, leaves us wanting more.